So your hosts today, the scrappy-looking gentleman on the left with the 9 chins is Larry Cramp. I'm on the right. My name's Jeff Liplinski, and we've got you guys all muted. So everything, again, let's use the chat log for all of the Q&A. And without further ado, I'll kick it over to Mr. Cramp.
Well, good morning or good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us. We're going to go over some of the features in the 86500 release, and then we'll, like Jeff said, we'll pause and take questions through chat. So let's get started. The biggest thing that we did in this release is introduce the onboard NVR. So what that means is the controller itself will become or can become an NVR if it's an SC100 or 300 controller. So it's not compatible with SC10s, 2s, or G1s. It also must be a master controller. So if you have an SC10 as a master and an SC100 as an extender, that is not compatible. The SC100 or 300 must be the master controller. So when it comes to NVR, the onboard NVR today will support 4 channels. So you can assign 4 ONVIF camera streams to it and record those. This does require a license. This license is EL-SW-NVR. And the MSRP for that is $499 US. The cameras that it supports are ONVIF stream. So a single ONVIF stream will be supported, and that's H.264, up to 4 megapixels and at 30 frames a second. Cameras that are not ONVIF are not supported in this NVR. If you have an ELAN camera, the analytics are supported, so motion, vehicle, person, as well as, this is new, and this is only on the onboard NVR, custom timeline events. And we'll touch on that in a little bit in a couple slides. The standard recording modes that you are used to, constant, motion only, and custom via a schedule, are also supported. An event pre-play offset is also supported, so 0 to 9 seconds. Now, what this needs to be used is a dealer-supplied USB, not NAS, hard drive or solid-state drive. Thumb drives are not supported. There's specific write times that need to be adhered to. And this is a new feature that's only on the onboard NVR, and that's the playback time. So let's just say you have one camera pointed at your driveway and one camera in the garage. If you started playing back the driveway camera and then switched as a car was pulling in to the garage camera, it will start the playback at that same time, so we can sync the times. Again, that's only for the onboard NVR, not the hardware versions. All right, so let's take a look at how to set this up. So the first thing you're going to need, again, is a USB hard drive. We have tested a bunch of them, and these are listed in the integration note. So the first thing you're going to want to do is get one of these, power the controller down, plug it into the USB, then power the controller back up. It's on the boot up that it'll detect that there's a drive. So if you have an SC100, for example, and you're already using the port for Z-Wave, for instance, you can use a USB hub to gain more ports. And again, those ones that we have tested are going to be in the integration note. Also, if you're not using a hub and you're using just the USB on the back of an SC100, it only has enough power to power an SSD, a solid state drive, versus a USB hard drive. If you do have a USB hard drive and an SC100, you are going to need a USB hub that is powered to power the drive. If you are using an SC300, if possible, use the USB 3.0 or the blue port if it's available. So after USB hard drive is connected, the next thing you're going to want to do is add the software license. That's the EL-SW-NVR. Now it's added via Management Cloud, just like the other SC100 license. And there's an image of it there. After the license is installed, and you obviously have the USB drive attached, you can go ahead and add the onboard NVR driver. Now that's under It's under video, and then there's a picture of it there. Once you have the driver added, you could then assign the USB drive. And in this case, this is an image of the Seagate 8 terabyte drive, and that's why it's listed as 7.3 terabytes. Once you select that in that settings dropdown, it'll then go ahead and format the drive. That'll take a couple minutes, but that is a necessary step, and it's automatic. Just drop it down, select the drive, and then it'll start doing it. Then you can go ahead and assign your 4 cameras or up to 4 camera feeds. You just drop those boxes down and you would select the cameras you wish to record. Now there is that clear recorded data checkbox that if you have this drive and you're, more for dealers who are using this and they want to clear out that data, you can check that box and it'll wipe it clean. Then you're going to want to set the recording option for each of the cameras and the profile. So for the ELAN cameras, the default is going to record the high profile or highest profile. If you have custom ONVIF cameras or generic cameras, you're going to want, and you have multiple profiles, you're going to want to set the profile that you wish to record. From there, the rest of the settings are found under the video settings in the settings tab on the user interface. You can see there most of them are already set. The only thing that that are options are if you want to set an event pre-play offset, and if you want to set any scheduling recording, and if you want to do any system mode links. And that's kind of cool because for some cameras, you might want to record them only when home mode versus away mode, and that's what system mode links will let you do. The rest of the settings are the camera specific settings, and I bring this to note because a lot of the systems that we look at, these settings are typically out of the box settings. We find that for best performance, these camera settings should be set per installation, as you'll get the best performance that way. Things like the survey area, the motion sensitivity. On the object classification, there is the minimum object height and width. Those make a big difference for how these perform. So I just want to put that out there just to remind you guys that that should be set and not left at default. This is a new feature and it's only on the onboard NVR. It's called custom recording events. So the cameras, the ELAN cameras will tell you when there's a person, a vehicle, or motion detected. We have this new option that's called custom, and it's basically generated by an event map, and I'm going to show you how to do that. And for this case, I'm going to say whenever my front door is opened, I want that to create an event on the timeline. So I can tell every time the front door is opened, who's there. And there's tons of different reasons and different applications that you would use this, but that is, one of them that I use and I like it. So the first thing you're going to have to do is create a push message that's in the messaging tab. Create the push message and then add that text. Now, this one is front door open, and you'll see that might become important later on. The next step is to go ahead and make an event map, selecting the event that you wish to trigger this notification, this timeline event. And for this, I'm using a security sensor for when the front door is opened. And again, you can use anything in the system, could be the garage door open, could be a motion detector, could be, basically anything. And once you got that, the next thing is to add the command. This command is located under NVR and then onboard NVR, and then the channel. So again, this is my front door, so that's the channel I pick. Then you have two options to choose. One is which push notification are you going to link this to? And again, this is front door open. That's what I chose. Whatever you do could be different, of course. Option 2 is the color. So what color is this identified with on the timeline? And then for this, I chose green. One other thing, on the camera itself, you'll see this option called ELAN Timeline OSD. It has three options: top, bottom, or off. I prefer this to be top or bottom, and you'll see why in just a second. Now, when you pick custom timeline events and you have set this up to record, you see that text that you set in the push notification will show in that timeline on the top. And you can also see it is identified with a green color. And you can see, if I pick custom, that you'll see all the times the front door has opened and who's opened it. Yep, it's always me.
That was a nice picture of you knocking down that strawberry truly on the slide before, Larry. Well played.
I was hoping you weren't going to catch that. I was wrong. All right, the next feature. Now, this feature is not specific to the onboard NVR. This will work with the hardware 8 and 16 channel NVRs, as well as camera-only installations where there isn't an NVR. It is called full screen mode. So the old mode, which was not an option, now it is standard. And you can see on the top that option and what it looked like. So if you had a camera view, you would see the camera plus whatever options that camera has to the right-hand side. And when you're doing a timeline, you'd have the timeline followed by all the options on the right-hand side. But what we did was we created a full screen option. You can see that underneath that same image from the standard to the full screen. I like that a lot better. I think that's a much better use of the image. I could see the image, much bigger, much better, especially on a mobile device. And the same with the playback. Those controls, if you're playing back, they will fade away, and if you touch the screen again, they'll come back. So you get a much full and clear picture of the image. And again, this is not just for onboard NVR. This is for the hardware NVRs as well as camera onlys. This option is found in the global settings on the user interface. So in user interface settings, advanced settings, video, and then you see this option here, which is called layout mode. OSD. Let's talk about OSD. So the most hardware NVRs that are sold, typically you'll find they have a HDMI output. And the idea behind that is to be able to take that OSD, all those cameras, and show them on a video or TV screen. So what we did is we modified our OSD to be able to be shared through a matrix. So typically, our OSD, how it worked before, was a zone-specific OSD to be controlled by an HHR remote. Now we have this mode, new mode, that you can distribute the OSD throughout a matrix of some sort or multiple zones. Let's see how that's done. First step is you got to make sure that the OSD is actually enabled. On the SC300, it is disabled by default. On the SC100, it's enabled by default. So that is in the interface tab, very bottom, on-screen display, and then make sure that setting is enabled. The next thing to do is go into OSD, go into advanced settings, and there's a new checkbox, and that is OSD mode. Default is the way that it has always worked in the past. Media source is the new mode for it to work. And this is the mode that is required if you want to distribute it via a matrix. Once that is set, you can go back into your media tab and you can assign the OSD to any zone controller you wish. Now, a couple things about this. There is a pre-built UI for the OSD. This UI is not modifiable. The OSD list will not be in the source tree within the configurator, but it will be in the source dropdown, just like the hardware NVRs. If you want the OSD just to show cameras or to be specific for cameras and video, you can still do that just like you would typically, and go into the OSD tab and make tabs visible or not visible. And again, this is covered in the new integration note for on-screen display. Here is a picture of the user interface that's pre-built for the OSD. Again, the top left button is zoom in. So this will modify the timeline on the playback screen. Then the next button down is back. That'll take you back one step in navigation. Underneath that is a zoom out, for the NVR timeline. And then underneath that is live. So this will jump you back between a camera's playback screen and a live stream. On the right side, you have playback. So if you want to start playing, you hit that. And then underneath that, you have the pause. And then you have the list button. So what that'll do is toggle you between the timeline view and event list view in the playback screen. All right. Well, first thing, now this is, again, kind of surveillance, but it's not specific to the onboard NVR. So this is camera grid mode. And what that is, and this did exist previously, if you want to see multiple cameras at the same time, you would use camera grid mode. Now there's a new option, video grid max columns. This is set to auto by default. And what we had found out was some touchscreens can handle showing many simultaneous camera streams and some cannot. So ITPs can handle more than a TP7 can. So auto will determine how many feeds that the end device or a viewer can handle and then send the appropriate stream. So it's kind of dynamic in that way. And I really suggest that you should use that. But we do have the option to set to 3, 4, or 5 columns max. And again, this is dependent on what the end viewing device is. But yeah, so that was reworked and redone. So camera grid mode is a new updated feature, basically.
Yeah, and if I could throw 2 cents in on that camera grid feature, this isn't new to this build, right? We kind of just tweaked it. That dynamically it would set based on whatever interface we're implementing this on. Talked to a lot of dealers and they didn't know this feature existed, right? Traditionally, so when we do the cameras, the end user has to scroll, right to left to get your camera feeds to populate. I'm a fan of having everything right on your interface. The less amount of times an end user has to scroll to access something, the better. So this camera grid, basically, it navigating this, and it really shines on the ITP panels. You can essentially have an NVR style grid view, all in your MJPEG or your low-res thumbnails, all on one screen to see your cameras. So that's done in the interface there, and it's per interface. So this is something that not many dealers, I think, have adopted yet, maybe just because they didn't know that it existed yet. So those of you guys not using it, take a look. It really cleans up the interface. It's a little bit more intuitive to the end user.
Yeah, I enjoy that mode a lot. No, well done. All right, the next one, and we talked about this a lot, but I felt the OSD change was more than just surveillance. We talked about it in surveillance because most NVRs have an HDMI output, but I feel, and we talked about this, that the OSD mode it could be useful in a non-NVR or camera specific thing, and I think that this needs to be talked about again. So this new mode, media source mode, is no longer limiting you to one zone. Now that does come with its limitations. So you need to be using it in its default or single media zone mode if you wish to use OSD for intercom. That needs to be zone specific, and that's kind of why it was done that way. But if you are not, and you want to stream this OSD to multiple endpoints, then you can certainly use media source mode, like we talked about. And there's some images there. That's the media source mode on the bottom left. And then just assign it to any zone device in the media tab, OSD:OSD. And then you do get it, again, across all viewer devices, just like any media source would. And that is, of course, HHR, mobile devices, all that. And, of course, G1 counts as that. So just wanted to bring that up again because I think it's a big thing. Next, we added a new custom control called door control. This is like we did for the door lock control. That exists in the security subsystem. But a lot of guys want to make custom pages for this. So we have this cool control, looks good and all that stuff, but you want to make a custom page and you have to create buttons and all that, and it doesn't quite look the same. So the idea was to create a custom control that you can now add a custom page specifically for your garage doors, and add multiple to it without the time of creating a custom page and the event maps to deal with it. So there's an image of what it looks like. There's an image of the add new control and an image of all the event maps that are also associated with this control. Events for open and close, commands for open, close, or toggle, and conditions. Now, going along with that is the Z-Wave device, the GD, the linear GD00Z or 00Z. That is the universal Z-Wave garage door opener. Well, this would only work with the garage door control, but we found that a lot of guys wanted to event map this specific device. So we added the ability to do this, and you can see the event maps that are now available with the Z-Wave garage door control. Events as opening, closed, stopped, and then commands for open, close, and toggle. And that was requested quite a bit. Next, video exporting on a camera that has the flip image set to 180 degrees. So if you have a camera and you mounted it in a way, or it needs to be mounted in a way, and then you need to flip the video, when you exported that camera, it would be exported in the way that it was recording, which is upside down. Well, now we have enhanced this, so when you export a camera where that setting is set to flip the image on 180 degrees or upside down, it will now export right side up. Since we have USB storage, support for USB storage for the onboard NVR, we now need a way or a place to host these storage devices. So we added the storage manager. Now, again, this is in the user settings under the password. This can be used if you want to go in here, and you can see that bottom right hand screen will show you how much drive space you have left, the incoming bit rate, the incoming frame rate. It'll show you devices or USB devices that are connected, but it'll also, this is where you'll now link a network drive if you're using it for pictures that are used in the screensaver. So you can do that all from here. One other important thing that you can do here is unmount a drive. So if you have, and you're using onboard NVR, and you need to disconnect the hard drive, you don't want to do that while we're writing to the drive. So you want to go into Storage Manager, select the drive, and then click the unmount button. Then you could safely pull off the USB cable. So that is another thing that you can do with this. Here's just some other technical details for what kind of photos we support. So yeah, this is needed and necessary for USB and just storage in general. Lighting. As you know, we've recently added lighting support via areas. But one thing we didn't do in the initial release was extend these areas to handheld remotes. So you would have all these areas that are generated and quite frankly, pretty nice looking and easy to use. But you would have an HHR handheld remote, and you'd have to still custom make a screen, an image, and all that stuff. So we've extended the areas, lighting area support now for HHR. So you can see that is an image of an HHR screen and what it would look like. Top left will turn the whole area on or off. To the right of that is the filter for shades or lights, and that, of course, is in lighting mode. Underneath that is if you have RGBW lights, that will support on a handheld remote, it will support the 16 presets. So you don't get the sliders like you do on a touchscreen, but you do get the 16 preset colors that you set and define. And you click on that, and I have an image of that next. Underneath that, the star icon, that's where all your scenes are stored for that area. And next to that are the individual loads. So if you have X number of loads in that room, you want to change one specific load, not all of them, you go and hit that button, select the load, and then we'll have a picture of that too. That slider and plus and minus are for the whole area control, so you can brighten it or dim it as you see fit. Here are the individual screen breakdowns. So that's the palette mode in the upper left. That is the 16 individual colors that are predefined. And that's how you can select them. Next to that is the load list. So if you want to change a specific load in that area, you can pick that and then do that. Underneath that is the shades, or sorry, the scenes. So you can go ahead and select or execute a scene. You can't add or modify a scene, but you can execute from here. And next to that is the shade filter. So if you have shades in the room and you click that filter button, you can see what the image looks like, and then that will be controlling the shades in that area.
Yeah, and Larry, if I could, you could back up one tab. We had a lot of questions this past week since the firmware has been dropped. You'll notice on the HR30 here, when you look at scenes, you got family 1, family 2, good night and welcome. A lot of dealers were calling saying, hey, I've got scenes, why aren't they showing up on the HR30? Well, with the new area navigation, how we've kind of done this, where it's a hell of a lot quicker for you guys to, make your pages the way that we've got the new architecture running. Your scenes are only going to pop up. You notice what's the header say on that remote expander room. So if you have any loads that are included, or any scenes where there's a load that is designated for the area of being in the family room, it'll show up there. So if you have scenes that are living room, bedroom, whatever, they're not going to populate. So these are going to populate dynamically based on what zone you're in and how you're tagging your scenes or your lighting loads, which are included in those scenes per room. Just wanted to touch on that. We had quite a few calls on that this week.
Thank you, Jeffrey. So another thing that we did for lighting is we added a scene button in the scheduler. So the idea here is you often have a scene that you would create, like in this case, lighting off at a certain time, or a scene for that. And then when you make your schedule, you'd have to recreate that scene. So you'd have it as a scene, a bunch of lighting loads, and they're doing certain things. And then you'd have to go in and you want to do that as a scheduled event. So turn off all my outdoor lighting. Well, it's already a scene, so I have to build it twice. It makes sense to have this as an available schedule. Also, the option to turn off the lighting scene loads, that is now an option. And the lighting load display name option. So what this is, and this is very similar to how sources work in media. So you have source and you have display name. Well, when we did the lighting areas, a lot of times the light loads that you have, you'll name them so you recognize where they are. So for instance, this is the area is called living room. Underneath that, I have the living room accent, living room lamp, living room recessed. In configurator, I need to keep those loads named that way so I or the dealer or yourselves can know which load this actually is. But in the reality is, I don't want them to say living room because this is end user facing, and I just want them to say accent or lamp or recessed. So we have gone through and added that same methodology that we did for media sources for lighting loads. So you can see under each lighting load, there's a new area, and that's display name. So you can take that and change it to whatever you think is more appropriate. And let's see what that looks like now. To me, that looks a lot better for end users. So you have the area of living room, and then what living room lights, accent, lamp, or recessed. Very, very simple. Also, when you're doing scenes, we use this to kind of mark up how those look. So underneath that, you can see I have lamp, and then underneath that, it'll tell me what area the lamp is in. So we still use the display name for the load plus the area that it's assigned to. So I think this is much more end user friendly. And yes, finally, we have alphabetized the media source icons. Next section, my favorite, as you know, drivers. So the internal drivers that we have done for this last build are we finalized the Luxor lighting driver. Now it's called Luxor because that's what the control device or the brain is. That's the Luxor brain. But what it really is FX luminaire and home lighting, exterior lighting control. We call it Luxor because that's the brain, and it travels over two different brands. But yeah, so that is supported now. And that does control RGB versions. They don't have a Kelvin or a white, but you can, in the integration note, there is a way to set up a white that it will respond to, but that is supported. The next update was for the linear garage door opener. We enhanced the performance of the cloud connection and performance in general. The next one, and we talked about this, was the linear GD00Z. That we've added event map support for that driver, which is the Z-Wave universal garage door opener. Also for linear garage door opener, we added support for their 841 and 863 garage door opener devices. And there's been some updates for KNX, the SIM-IP, which will be covered in the CER. All right, third-party drivers. Now, this list is ever-changing. I usually update it depending on when they come in, but it gets updated at least once a week, or if not more. For those of you who don't or haven't checked or don't check off in Marketplace, you should. It now features over 300 drivers, all by third parties. So these are some of the ones that were added in the last couple of months, 2 to 3 months, and there's quite a bit. And that's just that's most of them, but there's also updates. So when a driver gets updated, the update is posted to the marketplace. So not only do you find new drivers, but you can find updates to existing drivers. And the CER, so every release we have, we go through and comb through some field reports, and we try to fix as many as we can. I won't go through all these individually, but they're listed in the release notes.